All right, so when we have the event-specific phase, we have a couple of approaches to take on. So you have a race season where you have minor events with the major event, and then you have a single major event on the other hand of the column. So when we're talking about this, we're kind of thinking about a cyclist and then an Ironman or an ultra athlete. Obviously, you're not going to have a whole season of ultra races, and then in cycling, you're not just going to have one singular event that you do, unless you're doing kind of a race across America style. But for cycling, mountain biking, you're racing week in, week out almost. Whereas with a single major event, and especially running, you can't race every weekend. So what you'll do is you'll have some specifics within your training to really prepare you. So you have like practice races. When we're talking about these big ultra single event, single major peak, you have to make sure you are as prepared as possible for that event. So within training, you're going to have incorporated all the demands, or as much of the demands as possible, of your major event. So you want to be doing, if it's a trail ultra, you're on a trail with a similar kind of terrain, with a similar kind of topography and the similar kind of temperatures, so that you can get the demands of that event, see what your pacing looks like, see what your outputs are looking like, see what your hydration requirements are, your equipment requirements. All of that is going to have to be built into your training, as opposed to if we go to the left-hand side, and Matt can probably speak more to this, working with so many cross-country mountain bikers and enduro events where that almost every weekend, you can start to use those early season events to bring yourself up as your event-specific training, because literally, like, it is event-specific as it can get.
Yeah, like with mountain bikers, we don't do just one race. We're normally doing a dozen or 20 races in a season, and to be ready for every single event and to be at our tippy-top shape for every single event just means that we're going to be more well-rested for each one of them. And to be more well-rested, we need to do less training. So it just means that our fitness overall is lower because we've done less training, because we're fresh for every event. So what we normally do is we target a few parts of the season, and we'll train towards those and use the events leading into it as training events. And what that means is that we've done more training in the lead up to those events because they're not as big of a priority, and we're a little bit more tired heading into them. That doesn't mean we're going to go really slow in them. It just means they're not as big of a priority.
That's right. And when you have these multiple events within a season, it does become really hard to maintain and build fitness. And that's why these base phases, although when you try and, you look at something like a mountain bike event or cycling, where you're going hard, easy, a lot of big power outputs, big climbs, long efforts, short efforts, and you look at base phase training, you go, this has no correlation whatsoever. Where are my sprints? Where are my threshold intervals? Where are my power output workouts, like each and every week? Where the base phase does work super well is that it builds your fitness to the point where it's kind of, at its peak, and then allows you to maintain that for longer throughout your season. And then you are able to put your event specific demands. So pretty much, your lactate threshold, strength, high power out, sprint, muscle recruitment, neurological recruitment patterns, output stuff, specific stuff on top of that really solid foundation. If you've tried to do that for the 12 to 16 weeks before the season even started, you don't have a lot of room to move. You're going to then be trying to incorporate those 5 phases I talked about, like between every single race. Oh, damn, now I need to do my long ride because I haven't done one for X amount of time. And it just becomes like this vicious cycle of, kind of diminishing returns, plateauing, regression, overtraining.
And no good events either. Like, all event just becomes kind of average.
Yeah, that's right. You may find you start the season, and there'll be that dude you've seen out riding his bike super slow, getting dropped on the hills, and you kick his or her ass first race of the season. You're straight in there, straight out the blocks. No doubt, because you've been doing the training for that, and that makes sense. But when the season's 3 months long, they start to get stronger and stronger, and continue to improve or at least maintain their performance, whereas you start to really struggle and try to figure out, like, what was I doing? What did I do, Matt? We've been here. What did I do at the first race? I was doing a long ride, I was doing hard intervals, and I was doing my strength training, and I was doing my stretching, and I was doing all of my aerobic rides, right? And so you try and do all that between your worst, the crappy race you just had and the next race.
Yeah, and then you're just really, really tired, right? Whereas if you have a really big base heading into the season, you don't have to really stress as much.
Yeah, so I think, like, if you have a well-prepped base phase and you lead into a race season, I think it leads better to avoid overtraining, because having worked with being an ultra athlete, like coming from half Ironman, now ultra trail running, we kind of just leave it till that one event. We may do 1, 3, 4 weeks out, maybe even further out than that, if it depends how long it is. But we don't have those continuous, like, tests, because in training you can kind of lie to yourself. Oh, of course I was a bit off today. Of course my power was a bit down because I'm in I'm doing an ultra event. I'm supposed to be tired, and you can actually dig and dig and dig, and then not be able to get yourself out of that hole when you come near the race, because it's easy to lie. It's easy to lie to yourself. I've been there, and so when you get to the taper, you can't get out of it. So I find the risk of overtraining a lot higher, not just because of the distance or time that someone has to race, but because of the way the season gets structured.